Hey, Bill.
Hello, Matt.
Welcome into the DMZ.
It's very, very cozy. Not too humid today.
Southern DMZ, a little rain today. A little bit not as hot as it's been.
Despite the more milder climate in northern DMZ, I'm particularly bleary-eyed today. I had a relatively good sleep stretch, but I'm under a dual pressure here between sleep training my 5-month-old, and we've just weaned the 3-year-old, which it's probably still considered a little eyebrow raising in most quarters that we were breastfeeding our older child for that long. But as the Time magazine piece came out recently, there's a bit of a boomlet of extended breastfeeding till you're 5, breastfeeding till the kid says they want to stop, and this ties into the whole attachment parenting trend, for lack of a better word, So just so everyone knows where I'm personally coming from, so last night, our 6-month-old has been sleeping pretty well through the night, but she took unusually long naps during the day, which in the middle of the day I'm like, wow, we're doing this through Ferber, which is sort of considered the antithesis of attachment parenting, because that involves putting your kid in the crib and leaving them be for periods of time. And she pulls these 2 giant naps and during the day. I'm thinking, wow, the Ferber's really kicking in. We're in this really great groove. Boy, tonight's going to go great. But which is always the case I find with this stuff. Where there's always a pendulum swing. One good chunk of time was always you get a karmic payback later. And so she woke up at 3 in the morning, not upset, just like wanting to hang out. So I had to.
This is how it used to be in the old days. You had 2 sleeps.
Right.
Are you familiar with this?
That's right.
It used to be that people would, you didn't have TV or electricity, and it got dark at 5 or 6, and in the winter, and you would go to sleep, and then you'd wake up around 3, visit neighbors. Apparently, this actually happens. So
right.
This may be some sort of vestigial.
Yes, my 5-month-old is on an agrarian calendar.
Yeah. Well, these things, are innate. Though. We know this.
Right. I mean, all the sleep training we do is against nature. We're forcing our children to adapt to modern society. But in theory, as Ferber would say, children are flexible enough that you can mold them to what you want them to do. And so, but in this case, the molding cracked a bit, and so I was up from, my wife did 3 to 4, I did 4 to 5, and put her back down to 5. But then I do work in the morning, so I normally get up at 5:30, and I wasn't going to sleep for a half hour, so I've essentially been up since 4.
Bill? Are you into the caffeine? Are you?
No, as you may know, I'm Mormon in my drinking practices. So no alcohol, no caffeine. Which I do think it actually helps me in these circumstances. I don't need an artificial stimulant to get myself going. I'm just I might be a little off today. I might not be as crystal coherent as I normally am.
I am into caffeine, but like any other drug, the problem with it is that at some point, you have to take it just to get back to normal. So,
right.
So it probably wouldn't help you a night like that. It would help you, but not me. Like, right. You should actually drink.
It's part of your routine now.
Starbucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Once in your routine, you need to stay on routine. I need a sticky bun. I need sugar to get back on my routine. Which I did eventually get. But my older child, who has been weaned now for 6 days, not even 6, actually 5 days, and which has largely gone well. The amount of complaining she does at morning and night has gradually diminished by the day. We bribed her with a giant little pet shop treehouse, which was an ingenious move on my wife's part. But the value of breastfeeding to sleep is that you can control your clock better. You can knock her out early, and now she's going to bed later, but still waking up around the same time. And in the case of today, she woke up a little bit on the early side. So I had to, not only did I have to deal with the younger child at 4, I had to deal with the older child at 5:30, and do my morning work while taking care of her, packing her lunch, keeping her occupied, and whatnot. That is the place I've been in, because my household is this melding of attachment parenting and hardcore Ferbering. And that's why I find sort of interesting here is that in the mommy war articles that you get, they tend to put everybody in these different camps, and I imagine a lot of families are like me, where you're not necessarily part of some sort of parenting ideology. You're just doing what you think you have. We didn't become attachment parents by choice. We did it by default. But you end up there sometimes. I don't know how you structure your household, Matt, or you even think about parenting in this sort of way. But that's where my family is right now.
Well, I'm in a bit of a different situation because you have 2 kids, and that's more challenging. I have a 20-month-old son and another on the way in November. So I will grant that it's easier for me to, who am I to, far be it for me to criticize, because I have not yet attempted to have 2 children. I would say that that the way that we did it, I'm pretty proud of what we've done, and I don't know if it's a matter of consistency and organization, or just being fortuitous that our son is fairly a fairly good sleeper, a very good sleeper, I would say.
You have to try. He just was. You put him down, he slept, and that was it?
We didn't have to try that hard. I mean, what happened was my wife breastfed for about 9 months. She works outside of the home full time, and so it was tough. There's pumping, and there's coming home in the middle of the day, because these kids eat like every couple hours.
Right.
So if you work outside the home, it's challenging. We are very blessed. My mother-in-law is fairly young and quite energetic, and this is her first grandchild, and she only lives about an hour and a half away. So she's very frequently, a couple times a week at the house, and incredibly helpful. We also have a nanny who is teaching my son Spanish, which is very important to me. That's something that I feel like languages are very important to learn early, and I think we're going to add Mandarin or Arabic or something in a couple years, not immediately. But I feel like I'm of the belief that children have sort of an innate ability to learn language in a way that adults don't later have. And there's not a whole lot you can do for your kids. Once you've kept them safe, essentially genetics does carry a lot of it. But I do think that learning language is one of the things that you can actually do to help your kids, and so that's something I'm concerned about.
If you ever want to relocate to Western Massachusetts, we do have a Chinese immersion charter school here. So
that would be nice. I would be all about that. No, we basically, I don't know, when my son was, 9 months old maybe, he started sleeping all night, and the first time we sort of Ferbered him, I guess. We let him cry, and we would time it. If he cried for more than 5 minutes, we would hold him. If not, he would just go to sleep, and we'd put up with crying for 4.5 minutes. It's a modified Ferber. It's a partial Ferber. My son, essentially, he goes to bed at 7 o'clock at night and gets up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And he's been doing this for, almost a year, I would say now. He takes a nap during the day. The other thing that you have to do, honestly, is, again, easy for me to say, it just may be that we were very blessed to have a kid who sleeps a lot. But we do try to, get him some exercise and some energy to burn off. And I think there's a lot of also stimulation, because if it were just me or my wife at home, I feel like he wouldn't get the same stimulation that he gets from our nanny and her daughter, who's like a middle school age, to come over, and they're fresh, and this is their job, and they play with him. And then the mother-in-law comes in fresh, my mother-in-law comes in fresh, And she is one of these people. She had 4 kids of her own, and she like just naturally exudes energy, bubbly, loves kids, and so he is constantly getting fresh people who are coming in, and I think that's an advantage for him. But again, my philosophy, Bill, is to do what is best for you. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule.
You're not judging me for my wife breastfeeding her daughter till 3 years old.
Not at all. No, I think that it's what you're comfortable with and what works best for you. And I'm very pro-choice in this regard. Who am I? Who am I to say?
It's just amazing how many people do judge. There's this innate need to judge, especially with parenting, and it comes through in conversations or side conversations or random comments you get from strangers or news articles. People just have this compulsion to weigh in on your parenting choices, which I didn't quite grasp going into this endeavor. And not that I say that we are suffering from it on a daily basis where we are, we're not, but you do feel it a little bit. Just in the conversations that happen in the media, that you're sort of aware that someone's judging you somewhere based on what's being written about these subjects.
And it's probably harder on the moms. I honestly feel like my son is better off in this paradigm that we've created. Again, because he's getting, fresh, different people. But there are people who would, look down their noses at my wife and say, that you should be home with him all the time. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't be working.
I mean, in conservative movement circles, is that a problem? Is there pressure in professional conservatism for mothers to stay at home, or has it advanced enough where there are enough working women in the conservative movement where people don't talk about it that way?
And by the way, just as I was going to say, I think it's what's best for us or right for her, and I think someone else may be something different's better for them. But no, there isn't. I wouldn't say that the pressure is in any way a conservative pressure. I think that there is a societal pressure that transcends politics. And, I do think that there's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, where moms are, whether or not anybody is really doing this, they feel guilty no matter what they're doing, If you stay home, you feel like, maybe I should be out there, working. I mean, I'm sure that there are some feminists who think it's wrong to stay home. And then if you choose not to stay home, then presumably somebody thinks that that's wrong.
Well, I think I think there are cross pressures in the women's movement in this regard. There is certainly the attachment parenting thing is not necessarily contradictory to being at work, but there is definitely, I think, there's some extolling of staying at home, investing in your kid, being with your kid all the time, co-sleeping, extended breastfeeding and the like, and there are some there's some older feminists now who are pushing back at that, saying, why is the women's movement promoting attachment parenting? This is what we fought against. We're trying to get women to not be full-time mothers. We're trying to give them more options. Now you're putting social pressure on them to be full-time mothers. To agree with you, it's a damn if you do, damn if you don't situation.
Yeah, but I think it should be. I'm very pro-choice in this regard. I think that some women have a yearning to be home and to be very connected to their child, and I would encourage them to follow that yearning, and I think it's incredibly healthy and it's right for them. And I think other women feel like, I love my child, I love my children. The best way, and I spend a lot of time. Even if you work full time, you're still going to spend hours a day with your kids, unless you have like a live-in nanny or an au pair or something like that. Which, by the way, if you can afford one, go for it. I would highly recommend it. I'm trying to find a way to make that happen. But again, I think it should just be like what's best for you, and we really shouldn't judge if your child is cared for, if he or she is safe, is provided for, is loved, then they're way ahead of most people around the world. And I think judging whether or not you work part-time or full-time or whatever, I think it's but people do judge. There's no doubt about it.
Well, let me shift gears away from my lack of sleep to our good friend Mitt Romney, empty nester. Has the freedom to go on vacations in Europe, which I currently do not have. We touched upon this last week after just the initial gaffe that wasn't even out of Romney's mouth, out of his unnamed advisor's mouth, the Anglo-Saxon comment, which is not even being remembered at this point because there's been so many other gaffes now since then. But we both said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, we both didn't quite get why he was doing this trip in the first place.
Right.
And now it seems like whatever merit there was in going, it would seem to have been a missed opportunity to have burnished commander-in-chief credentials, controlled news cycles, introduced himself to the public on his terms. Because every day in every country there was something that went awry or could have been interpreted differently or just was a flat-out foot-in-mouth situation. So I certainly feel like I think it's a total loss for the trip, and I think he's now gone essentially 3 months without having really controlled his narrative in any way, shape, or form. He's running out of time to do that. But I imagine some conservatives might be looking at this and saying, hey, you shouldn't apologize for praising the Israeli economy. You shouldn't apologize for pushing back on the media badgering you. You could turn this to your advantage. Do you have that sense coming from the right at all?
Some people see that. I see a few things. One, I think you're right about the missed opportunity. I don't think this is a disaster. I don't think this cost him the election or will really even matter that much. But I do think it's a missed opportunity. I mean, the opportunity cost, of course, is he could have just stayed at home and campaigned in Ohio or something. And presumably, I know he did fundraising abroad, but presumably the point of the trip is to get good press attention, to present yourself as commander-in-chief potential. And that clearly didn't happen. Now, some of that may be that the media wasn't fair or that there's a biased media, but that's really irrelevant. He chose to go. He knows how the media is, or ought to know. And his team either didn't manage the press well enough or didn't predict that the press would not give them a fair shake. Either way, it's incumbent upon them to do better. So I think it was a missed opportunity. Again, I don't think it's a disaster. I think some of what people consider gaffes could, on the margins, even help him. I think some of the stuff about Palestinian Israel stuff, which internationally is seen as a gaffe, I think Americans are very pro-Israel by and large. And so I don't know that hurts him at all. But it does make you wonder, at what point does he ever control the media narrative? Clearly not able to do that. And again, I do think that there are obstacles to overcome, that the press loves Obama. But, when will he ever be able to... we just keep saying it's not disastrous. Well, yes. You could go through life saying, today wasn't disastrous. At some point, if the best you can do every day is say, well, it probably won't hurt me, that's not how you win an election.
Well, okay, I think any politician, any presidential candidate or incumbent runs the risk of getting on the media's bad side. And part of the job of campaigning is to do things that will goad the media into writing nice things about you. I don't think there's any candidate. You can certainly look back at an election and say, this guy got better press than the other guy. But I don't think there's any election where I'd say the media was predisposed from the get-go to help this guy win and screw the other guy. The winning candidate did something, fed the media in some way, created events that reporters saw as newsworthy. So they got their story told more on their terms than the other guy. And the campaign
That's true. I think all that's true, but I would also say that there is a certain bias, and I don't even want to say liberal bias, but I think that Barack Obama is perceived as more likable and more like people, the press that I know in D.C. and New York, than Mitt Romney, who doesn't, they're much more likely to like Obama.
But I still see news reports that call both candidates aloof, and how both candidates have trouble connecting with regular people, which I find the case for Obama ridiculous. I think when I see Obama on the stump, I see him. He looks very natural, and very comfortable, and connecting with people all the time. And I think the polling.
You have to realize too that you are not an average person.
I'm a totally biased person. I accept that, but
you're a professional, writer, pundit, think tanker who lives in Massachusetts. I mean,
when I say Obama, both of these guys go to the Midwest and hit the diners and the state fairs and whatnot, and I would say you don't see a lot of examples of Obama going into the diner and having an awkward conversation with somebody. And he often goes into environments where he really has no business being comfortable, quite frankly.
I think some of the problem that Obama has is the comparison to Bill Clinton, who still looms large, and in fact will be, nominating him at the Democratic Convention. That's not really a fair comparison. I mean, Bill Clinton is a master politician, and especially when it comes to empathy and connection. And I think that because he is still very much around, that Obama sort of doesn't look good in comparison.
But at the time, Bill Clinton got into all sorts of scrapes and had all sorts of problems communicating, and lost his temper sometimes very publicly. Bill Clinton's press conference after they lost the midterms, sort of pleading that the president is still relevant.
Still relevant, yeah.
And then going and saying that his big tax increase was a mistake. I mean, these are the kinds of things that I've never seen Obama do. But Clinton obviously looks better in retrospect because he ended his presidency on an up note.
An up note, the Monica Lewinsky thing? Or?
Even that, but he still had good poll numbers in the midst of all of this.
He has like a 66% approval right now. But I will say, I think that part of what Obama is by and large more disciplined. And I think, though, that that's part of the lovable nature of Bill Clinton, that he wasn't disciplined. He's like you, not you, but he's like
lovable rogue.
Yeah. He eats fast food, McDonald's food, all that stuff that plays into it.
But to the original point, no one wins an election by whining about the media. When Bush Sr. ran against Clinton, they printed bumper stickers that said, "Annoy the media, re-elect George Bush." That's not a way to win an election. You win an election by working with the media and doing things that will help the media write nice things about you. Like, you need to fight with them. I mean, there's folks on the left that have been were in awe of the Bush Jr. squad, how they would intimidate media, that Rumsfeld or Cheney would, just berate the questioner on a Sunday show and essentially, bend them to their will. And I think there are certain circumstances where that is a smart strategic thing to do. But if all you do is stiff arm and at least with the other arm not give the media something to work with. Look, I mean, the Obama people, they restrict access a good amount too. They're not completely freewheeling. I think Obama does a lot of town halls. I think probably more town halls than any president's ever done. But I wouldn't say he's walking around town every day. He's taking questions left and right. No one does that. But he does enough stuff that gives the media something juicy to write about, that the degree of complaining is a lot less. I mean, and there have been some complaints to me that Obama's not accessible enough. But Romney is also a total stiff arm, and not using the other arm to give them good stuff to work with. There's almost no thought put into what can I do to make the media, work on my behalf. And I apologize for speaking in very, crass PR terms, but look, that's the way it works. And if you're going to be in complaint mode, you're guaranteeing bad coverage.
Well, whether or not it's fair, campaigns need to get good press coverage. And it is their job to find a way to portray their candidate in the best possible light. Whether that's by carrots or sticks is really irrelevant. And they have not, in recent days, accomplished that.
And we would agree that the kiss my ass is not the right way to use a stick.
I don't think that was. I don't think that was terribly helpful. There are some conservatives who are kind of applauding that and trying to say that was good. Look, I think if Chris Christie has this thing where he will sort of stand up to the press, and I think he gets a certain amount of respect and credibility because he does it. It's not the place of a traveling press secretary to do that, and I don't think it really gives Romney any credit for being tough either to have someone else do this.
I mean, I can sympathize with what the conservatives are saying to be fair-minded about this. If you look at the video clip, the reporters are kind of being jerks. They're yelling questions across the tarmac, which obviously he's not really going to turn around and answer the question at that point. Right. And they're not great questions. What about your gaffes? That's not an insightful question. Obviously, if you're at the point where he's literally 50 feet away, walking away from you, the jig is up. You're not getting the question. But I just think for the response to be even more sophomoric than the initial question, when, again, you're trying to show how you're going to be a dignified presence on the world stage and your staff is a reflection of you, as much as it might feel good to see, a silly question get slapped down like that, it doesn't serve the overall purpose of communicating to the public you're going to be a professional diplomat on the world stage.
I mean, what if you owned a chain of restaurants and a customer was being disrespectful and out of hand? You would hope that the guy making minimum wage would be like, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to, please, that's disrespect." Not to say kiss my ass. And that's what we expect out of somebody representing a fast food restaurant getting paid minimum wage. I think it's fair. I think that the point is that this is a holy place. Please, let's show some respect. That's completely fine, and I would, applaud him for saying that. But kiss my ass.
He could have communicated that in an inside voice.
What's that?
You could have communicated that to the president in an inside voice. Excuse me.
Yes.
If you're having a problem getting your questions answered, I'm happy to talk to the candidate about that. If you have specific questions, I'm happy to relay that to him.
Right.
But we're in a holy place right now, so it's not the time and place for this.
To the Patrick Swayze Roadhouse. A great scene from Roadhouse when he says, he brings everyone together and says, you're the bouncers, I'm the coolers. And if someone's in here and they start a problem, you will go up to them and you will be nice. You will ask them to stop. If they will not stop, you will escort them to the door and you will be nice. You will then ask them to leave. If they don't leave, you will help them leave, but you will be nice. That is, essentially the speech, which, YouTube it, it's fabulous. But, I mean, that's basically your job. Now, I understand the guy's under pressure. This was a trip that was botched in many ways. One guy, he's surrounded by press, and I largely encourage an aggressive and even impolite press corps. I think that's by and large healthy, but they were being annoying. They were being, arguably disrespectful, and I think telling them that's fine. He made a mistake we all lose our cool, and he did, and he should not have done that, and it did not help his candidate. Now, he is this Gorka, is the story, and that should not be the case. And look, part of the criticism is that rather than talking about, Mitt Romney's speech in Poland or meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu or whatever, we're talking about petty horse race stuff. Well, guess what? You just gave the press a juicy, petty horse race story, and you just handed them that sword. So,
and I don't want to dwell on this too much because I want to shift to the Clinton and Obama thing that you raised. But what? And I've done PR, and I've been a public spokesperson before, and so I have some understanding about how this kind of dance works. If you're seeing the press corps following your boss and yelling questions at their boss, that should tell you, hey, there are questions. There's a story they want to write, and they're probably going to write it, whether I like it or not. And they have questions that they want answered to help write that story. Even if Romney's not going to go to the back of the plane and sit down for a grilling, you can still go to the reporter and say, hey, I'm sorry the candidate has a busy schedule today. He's not doing a press availability today, but what question do you need answered? I will go to the candidate and try to get a statement for you to answer your question. And look, it could be a vague statement. It may not totally satisfy the reporter, but at least you'll ensure there'll be some quote from the candidate in a story that's probably going to get written anyway, that's telling your side, telling things on your terms, and not have this giant blow up.
I think
that's what a press is supposed to do.
As in this role, you certainly work for the campaign, and your responsibility is to the candidate. But I think you should also consider yourself, to a certain degree, a representative of the press as well.
Or at least a liaison. I mean, your job is the liaison between the press corps and the candidate.
Right. You should be an advocate for them to a certain degree. I mean, I think if you want to be successful, if you want them to like and respect and trust you, which you need them to do your job, to do the candidate's bidding, you must earn a certain amount of respect from the press. And clearly there was not. This appeared to me to be an adversarial relationship. Again, I don't blame him. He's under pressure, and it's easy for me to sit here. I wasn't on that trip. They're probably sleep deprived. Things didn't go terribly well. They're outnumbered by reporters who are not happy, who want to write kind of cheap stories. It's a difficult gig, and I think we just have to appreciate how hard it is. But clearly, this is somebody who sees himself in an adversarial position versus the press, and that's certainly not where you want to be.
So anyway, you mentioned before Clinton is going to put Obama's name. He's going to be the person who nominates Obama at the convention in September.
And Elizabeth Warren before that, right? She's
going to speak on the same night, and this is normally the Biden night. This is the day prior to the last day, which traditionally is the vice president's night, where he or she is the main primetime speaker. And Biden's not going to get that now. There's going to be all the focus on Clinton. I'm curious how much Warren gets. I don't know necessarily if Warren would get network coverage, for example. Maybe. We'll see. But certainly Clinton will. And Biden will, but he has to share the spotlight. So I guess my question to you is, do you think is this a masterstroke on the part of Obama, that he's going to help unify the various camps in his party? Or is it, I've seen some pundits say, is it a sign of weakness that Obama's so desperate, he's in such dire straits that once again he has to break the glass, pick up the red phone, and call it for the emergency reinforcements, have Bill Clinton come in and save the day. The only person who can communicate to regular people, because Obama is so detached and aloof and academic, yada yada yada. Which way do you see it?
Well, I think it's much more questionable whether or not you use Elizabeth Warren, because I understand that she is in many ways a very attractive candidate, but I think she's very attractive to a more urban, cosmopolitan, progressive audience. Bill Clinton, on the other hand, can be very appealing to a much wider audience of conservatives and blue-collar folks and liberals and progressives. But you asked me specifically about Bill Clinton. Look, Bill Clinton if you have, this is like you got Magic or Michael Jordan sitting on the bench. Are you going, and you're in the playoffs? Of course you're going to bring him in the game. I mean, Al Gore probably should have used Bill Clinton more in 2000. And I think that I don't see this as an act of desperation or as a sign that Obama himself can't compete. I think that this is going to be a very tight, very close race. And I think if you have someone like Bill Clinton, who's, again, the latest I saw, 66% approval rating, of course you use him.
But you think Warren's a mistake?
I don't know that she's a mistake. I'm just much less certain that this is the right move. Clinton, to me, is a no-brainer. Now, look, does he have the capacity to say something controversial? Of course he does. Of course he does. But to me, Clinton, this decision is obvious. The Warren decision, I would have to debate. I'm not sold on her, but it may not matter. I mean, she may not get that much exposure. It used to be that the networks covered these things gavel to gavel, and now most of it, very little of it, I think, is on broadcast television.
Right. That's why it's unclear to me whether people even see Warren unless they're junkies watching it on cable.
Yeah, and you have political junkies. So we'll see. I will say this: I don't think Elizabeth Warren is this year's Barack Obama. Remember, Obama gave that terrific speech.
But I don't believe Obama's speech in 2004 was seen on broadcast television. If I recall, that
wasn't.
And that's why, Warren, I think, is potentially interesting there. There's two people mentioned who are essentially up-and-comers. One is Warren, who already is well-known in liberal quarters. And the second is the San Antonio mayor, Julian Castro, who I think is not very well-known nationally at all, but maybe will become so after keynoting. But there are definitely liberals out there fantasizing about Warren running for president someday. And if she does a bang-up job with the convention, perhaps that buzz will grow even louder because the bench theoretically is not that deep post-Obama just yet.
It's funny. The conservative base and the Republican base is much stronger. And as Chris Cillizza has an interesting post in the Washington Post today showing that although Democrats have a lot more diversity, it is Republicans that have the most rising stars.
Well, so I think they have the more rising stars that have gotten some national notice so far. I guess what I'm curious about is there actually a bench out there that we don't know about yet that can be built up? Are there other mayors like Julian Castro that we just don't know about who are in their mid to late 30s?
Right, but where Castro, where does he go from here? I don't see him getting elected statewide in Texas anytime.
Well, there's a debate about that.
That Texas is going to go blue, but how does he get elected statewide in Texas?
Well, there is some discussion that Texas is at a tipping point within 10 years because of the growing Hispanic population, and that it will eventually go blue, and that he's so young enough that he would be able to take advantage of that once it does. And so to have him be keynote is I think, at least a minimum, saying the Democratic Party is saying we want to play in Texas not too far from now.
Long discussion, but if Texas, look, they elected, before George W. Bush, they had
and Richards,
governor, and Richards,
yeah,
and so it's not impossible.
And she keynoted in '88.
That's right. George Bush, born with a silver foot in his mouth.
Right.
I remember that.
And she was just state treasurer at that point. She wasn't governor yet.
But if Texas were to go blue, that's incredibly.
If Democrats had an electoral lock on New York, California, Illinois, and Texas, I think the Republican Party would have no choice but to get with the immigration program and start paying for some Hispanic votes. They would have to change or die at that point.
It becomes very difficult to get the requisite electoral votes, no matter if you were to run the table on virtually the middle of the country.
So that's why I thought the Castro pick was an interestingly aggressive pick, because I think that has an eye on trying to pull off that that electoral lock fantasy. But to go back to Warren for a second, I mean, so you're making a bit of a presumption. I grant you're not all the way there yet. That she is more of a liberal icon and less of someone that can appeal more broadly to the middle of the country. But some of the liberal hope of Warren is that she is not a stereotypical, Northeast Harvard egghead, even though she is a Harvard professor. But she's from
Oklahoma.
Exactly.
She's from Oklahoma.
That she's from Oklahoma. She has a middle class mindset. She doesn't talk in egghead terms. She's very plain spoken. She has a nice populist demeanor that's not overly hot or angry. And will that come through in this convention speech to make people say, wow, she really has the goods?
I think it's entirely possible that she gives a good speech and that it receives, that it's praised as a good speech. I don't think she can play nationally. I mean, look, winning a race in Massachusetts, which she's yet to do, is entirely different than appealing, as Michael Dukakis and John Kerry and maybe Mitt Romney, we'll find out, is dramatically different than winning. And I want to tell you, she screams liberal. She does. Now, maybe the country will change to such a degree someday that is fine.
Doesn't Obama scream liberal?
He has a likability quality to him, and also, I mean, I would also say clearly there were extenuating circumstances to his election, including the economy in 2008 and the Iraq, and Afghanistan and Bush fatigue. But having said that, I think that Barack Obama, you cannot deny, has a certain charm and likability about him that is quite exceptional. And I don't, as much as I think that Elizabeth Warren is in many ways an appealing political figure, I don't think she has that certain it the way that Obama does. Well, maybe I'll be wrong.
These conventions will be too rough. We'll see soon. I will be in Charlotte, by the way. For maybe I'll be able to do a blogging hits from Charlotte on that week. I do have to jump, but just quickly, do you have some quick thoughts on the Jonah Lehrer scandal?
Well, yeah. The thing that I thought was interesting is Robert Wright over at The Atlantic, our blogging heads guru here, also at The Atlantic, wrote an interesting piece, essentially predicting that Lehrer could make a comeback. As everyone knows, I'm sure, he stepped down from The New Yorker after it was revealed that his book, Imagine, had misquoted or fabricated quotes of Bob Dylan, and he admitted to that and stepped down. And I think the interesting question is, can he come back or not? And I don't know the answer. Now, Bob seems to think he can. If you look at people like Doris Kearns Goodwin, who plagiarized and yet hasn't missed a beat, and we've seen people like Maureen Dowd,
Mike Barnacle,
Mike Barnacle seems to have landed on his feet. On the other hand, you've got people like Jason Blair and Stephen Glass that can't get arrested in this town. And so my question is, why is it that some people are like Teflon? This doesn't taint them, and in fact, they seem to prosper after having these incredibly embarrassing revelations, which really go to the heart of as a writer. And others are basically run out of town.
Well, I think
Robert Wright seems to think that Jonah Lehrer will make a comeback. Look, the guy's only like 31 years old. He's incredibly smart. But where's Stephen Glass?
Well, I would make the opposite argument. The reason why that Goodwin and Barnacle and Dowd didn't fall from grace is that they were already established, already had lots of elite friends, already had people in media purchase willing to give them a second chance. I mean, Doris Kurzgowin took a bit of a powder, and then she got back on the Meet the Press roundtable soon after. But all was forgotten. Mike Barnicle, took a little vacation, then got back on the MSNBC pundit roundtable, and that was permanently ensconced at Morning Joe.
Right.
Whereas if you're younger and you haven't built up that friendship network yet, who's going to pick you up when you're down? So I guess maybe it's not just a question of age, but does Lehrer have someone who's going to stick his hand out to him and lift him back up in 6 months? That's what I want to know.
That is fascinating. There does seem to be a correlation in age. I didn't think of that, but you're right. It does seem that the people who were more established did not have their careers ended, and the people who were young did not handle it as well. And it also just may be that they don't have that their reaction is different because they don't have the life experience. If you get busted for this at the age of 45, you've taken some punches. It's not just that you've built up friends and allies, which is probably a smart move, but maybe it's also just that you take it in stride. You're less likely to go into hiding, but who knows?
My question is, who fabricates quotes from Bob Dylan?
Who's
sure going to get away with that?
It's utterly bizarre. I can understand the thing where you have an intern who does something, and or where you copied and pasted something. I mean,
you were sloppy and you forgot to attribute. I mean, right. I understand people making mistakes,
but to overtly fabricate quotes from Bob Dylan, it's bizarre. And clearly, again, this is a very smart guy. Now, the funny thing is, apparently, Jonah had written something recently about this disconnect that smart people are sometimes even more vulnerable to doing stupid things, such as this. It's amazing that he had just written something about this disconnect.
Maybe he knew. But I know just from reading these quotes, I haven't read the book, but it didn't strike me as like these quotes were so integral to the point he was trying to make. So I'm not quite sure
I do not pretend.
Maybe they were. I don't know. I haven't read it. But
my understanding is that they were not.
Right. So yeah, I totally get. Look, I'm not the most organized person in the world. Look, I just went through this with the New York Times myself because my piece got fact checked, and it's fact checked literally like 5 hours before it's going to go get put to bed. And I was asked like 6 questions. Can you explain this? Can you explain this? Can you explain this? And I'm doing this, and I try to be good, and I try to like make markers where I need attribution and where I got certain facts, and so I could quickly look them up and give them back in this circumstance. And I missed a couple. There are a couple of things where I did not remember where I got them in the first place. I had to go scurry and remember what I did. And there was one fact that I had, and I just could not get back where I got it from. And it wasn't integral. I was like, look, you cut this line. I was embarrassed. I felt I had put something in there that I couldn't back up. But in the course of my trying to find it, I found something else that was parallel. I said, yeah, you can use this thing, or you can just cut the line. And then I'm using the other thing that I found. So I understand I had a bit of a panic myself that I screwed up something like that. Unintentionally, I wasn't trying to fabricate something. I did. I was looking back, I was like, where did I get that from? Darn it, So I get that stuff like that happens, but why it would have been caught somewhere down the line and how exactly you concoct out a whole cloth, that I don't get.
Yeah, I think I'm fairly, as someone who writes a lot, I think I'm fairly forgiving. I think mistakes can be made, and that it doesn't, it doesn't speak to your character. That there's certainly certain mistakes that can be made that are forgivable. Maybe it's laziness or sloppiness or whatever. But, and then there's also the thing where, like, you could accidentally misattribute a quote or something. I mean, that's a mistake, and it's certainly not good, and it needs to be corrected, but it's a mistake. But fabricating, quotes is clearly
And Dylan.
unethical and inappropriate.
You gotta fabricate from some stranger. You don't fabricate Bob Dylan.
Well, anyway, it'll be interesting. I will be fascinated to see if this clearly very smart, very talented young man just disappears, or if he can. I'm betting that he comes back.
Kid's got in him. His talent can't be stopped.
I think he comes back, but again, I think your argument would be that because he's young, the odds are less likely that he can weather the storm.
I don't know how many friends he has. Let's see how many friends he has in high places. Well, I need to jump.
All right, bud.
But next week, it's 2 weeks you're off, right?
What's that?
2 weeks you're taking off?
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
Okay, I think we're going to get Kristen Soltis to come back.
Sounds good. That'll be fun. A fun reunion, and we'll look forward to it. I'll be watching it from an undisclosed location.
Okay. Have a good week. Take care.
All right, man. Thanks.
Bye.